Here we are this morning again. Good morning, everybody. We're here with Create a World. This is Deborah Merchant and Victoria McMahon. Very, very, very exciting. So, Victoria, like we discussed, we're going to continue with what we started last week, when we all met together. We're going to start with standing in your own merit. And for anybody who's just joining, we're beginning an exploration of what that means. What is that? And the first part to remind everybody is we're not talking about who is valuable or what is valuable. Everybody is intrinsically valuable beyond measure. That's just settled. But we're also not talking about like what's valuable. What does being in your merit mean? We're not talking about careers or self-expressions or whatever that's better than others. None of that. We're talking about it. Victoria actually said it in a different conversation in a way that I want to track on it, because she said something like, Victoria, you correct me if something like, oh, it's about what's yours to be, do, and have.
Yeah.
So I think I want to start there, Victoria, if you would start by talking about what you meant by that. That's a phrase, be, do, and have is a phrase we use kind of, it's one of our little vernacular terms that has a lot of potent meaning in the field of Tantra Mat, and I've heard it in other domains, but talk about it to let people know what you're presencing.
Good morning, good afternoon, good day, wherever you are. It's nice to see you and be with you, Deb. And be is the word that for be, do, and have. Be is the word for me that is the potency to open up what we're present to in our being. It's not what we're doing, the daily tasks, the careers, like you were speaking to. That's not our conversation today. It's about being who we are and authentically present with that, and knowing that for me, our merit is the description of who we are being in this body, in this life that we have the opportunity to explore and invite and presence ourselves in the world. So it starts for me from that sense of being who I know myself to be. That it's more than me going around and doing activities. It's who am I in the presence of myself? And in that, doing what is mine to do. What are my unique gifts that I bring to this conversation today? I don't know what it will be necessarily. I know being present to what I'm experiencing throughout this conversation will guide the doing of what I might say. And oftentimes, I don't know about you, Deb, but sometimes I find myself speaking in a way that is startling to this mind, to this being, that it opens up from the more capacity that I have access to. And sometimes I know I have that access, and sometimes it's a startling revelation, if you will. That's an interesting word to pop in too. And from that beingness, the activity, I noticed that I have a connection to myself, a connection to how I operate or how I move through the world in relationship to others. And others for me is people, not, for sure, but it's also in relationship to the natural world and in relationship to how I sense beyond what I see, what I hear, the greater sensing of how we are. So that's like a starting place. What pops up for you?
Well, what you said gives me a way to demonstrate. We've used the phrase, the system you're born into a
Mhm.
couple of times or however many times on this show. So I would think that one way is people often think, certainly young people as they're growing up, what do I want to be when I grow up? What's going to make me important? How do I know I'm fulfilling on my purpose? There's a real charge forward, a lot of young people, a drive forward, a drive into their own life. But what I notice is they pull from outside themselves.
Mm.
So it lives in, I'm going to be a fireman. I'm going to be, like you and I have roots in psychology. I'm going to be a psychologist. I'm going to be a corporate exec. What from the outside gives me the status, the measure that I really am as great as I know I am.
Mhm.
And what you're speaking from is the other direction, is
Mhm.
from inside yourself, accomplishing, knowing, being very well grounded, solid in, and satisfied with who you are. And then that expresses itself uniquely depending on the person. For example, you teach yoga. That is, I cannot imagine myself teaching yoga. I was about to say I'm never gonna, but better be careful because you never know. Do you know that is such an important expression for you of who you are, but it started from within yourself and your connection to life. It didn't come from the status out here in the world of a yoga teacher, although that is pretty firm. So that's the first thing I'm hearing, is a change from what seems to be typical. And I'm reminded of a lady. I don't know if I told this story on this show or not, but I had flown probably from home into San Francisco for school, and the flight was horrible. And whatever the layover was, all the different things that can go wrong that make them irritating, tiring, exhausting, whatever. And I just went into the bathroom, and there was a cleaning lady, cheerful, giant smile, singing, and her voice was beautiful.
Mm.
And then the acoustics in the bathroom made it wonderful. And it just melted everything all my irritation and stress. And I asked her how she was being so happy, and bringing that to cleaning the bathrooms. Now, I also did it in a way, I do recognize the importance of the people who clean the bathrooms in schools, airports, whatever. But so it wasn't like that. It was, but I asked her, how is she bringing this extra? And she talked about knowing her importance as a being, and she just happens to be cleaning bathrooms as a job right now. And that this was what she could do to spread that kind of grounded beingness she has. to other people. And she, you know, me, for example, it just melted
Yes.
all of it, all of it. And it was just such an important conversation to have with this person. And that was years ago, and I'll probably never forget that.
Mhm.
So you're absolutely right. It's not about what you do that makes you important or strong or grounded in who you are, that illuminates your merit. It's who you be, and then that gets expressed through what you're choosing to do. You know, what matches you, because we do so many things during a day, like wash our dishes or whatever. I garden, you teach yoga and have many other things. So we have our careers. If we do, yeah, everybody does, whether, regardless of what it is. If you're a student, you're a young person, your career is getting your education, you know, maybe taking care of your siblings. We all have our engagements that express us, right? So that's what I'm hearing in what you're saying.
You know, you're pinging the conversation further for me from the point of view that if we are doing what is ours to do from that grounded beingness that you talked about, then the doing is just simply shaped by how we're moving in our lives forward. It's really important for me to reflect upon all these many years of doing different activities. When I was going to school, going to college, I was doing the activity of studying, but I was also doing the activity of working in a fast food place so that I could have sustainability to continue school.
Right.
And I can reflect on that time. Just because I worked in a fast food place doesn't mean I didn't have a great time working in a fast food place. And I brought my grounded beingness into that particular location. And everybody said, wow, when you show up, we love working with you, because I brought my full self into it and tended to the people that came into the place, to the people that worked there. I paid attention to that feeling of connectedness. And it feels very similar to me to the woman who tends the bathroom. It's what are you tending to? And are you fully present to what you're tending to? It doesn't matter whether you're a CEO or the president of the United States or tending a bathroom. Are you caring for and about and tending to it in a way that you're fully present and you contribute that way to everything working because you're contributing from your being?
That's
And
really,
you
really
have
brilliant.
joy. You have joy because you're tending fully present.
Tending fully present. The phrase that I used last week a little bit was in regards to standing in your merit, was like letting your light shine. Don't keep your light under a bushel. You know, the bushel basket that mutes the light. And I think what you just said is such a fundamental part of that. And it doesn't mean be, you know, happy and peppy and cheerful and necessarily, unless that's your way of being, because I would say I tend towards more, you know, serious than you do. And you have more of that maybe bubbly joyfulness. If I'm talking in stereotypes, but the tending to the joy, tending to the fostering what we use the term life enhancing.
Yeah.
Too, fostering what enhances life, what uplifts people in or others, the garden, the plants, I do not like to do the dishes, but if I do the dishes from the place of gratefulness of the meal I had,
Yeah.
or the people I ate it with, you know, tending to what's life enhancing, then it makes a difference in the what shows up around me.
And you know, I gotta say this. 20 years ago, my husband gave me the gift of enjoying doing the dishes.
Ah,
He taught me that. I hated doing the dishes.
yeah.
And then it's probably 30 years ago. Sorry. Time slipped there. When we were early in our relationship, he was like, but see how it feels when you're done. Everything has its place. Everything is open and relaxed and you're complete with it. And so I started practicing with that idea of I would complete something and it would just take it out of my mind. I didn't have to quote worry about it. Right. And so now I'm like, oh, I've got to do the dishes. It's
Wow.
it sustains me. It's a life enhancing practice for me all these years later that was his gift to me. And I think that's little things like that are astounding for us if we pay attention in a way that gives us what is that having joy. Now I have joy around the dishes because someone else gave me a new way to think about it and to open myself up into having more of what seems like such an ordinary thing becomes extraordinary.
That is so brilliant. And it doesn't mean ignoring, sidestepping the difficult things either, does it?
Not at all.
Because I want to make sure we touch on, our journeys in our career paths, for example. And you started off as a psychologist, right? And that's where I kind of ended up.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of things that are very difficult that we engage with. People are coming to us in those careers that something has really destabilized them and they are not there on their best day.
Right.
At all. Whether for just quite a huge range of life circumstances. And all the way just never mind. That sums it up.
It does.
But you're not talking about stepping out of or away from what could be difficult, because your journey took you into teaching yoga and a lot of body work practices. I'm sure that a lot of people have come to you not on their best day to get their body well again, and to accomplish some level of physical capacity that they hoped was possible.
Mhm.
May not have been as far up as new as possible. So what you're talking about still What am I trying to get at?
Well, here's what pops up for me, Deb. When you mentioned you might never do yoga,
I couldn't teach it, that is for sure.
you might never facilitate it.
Right.
But what I believe is true about the practice of yoga is that yoga is about becoming connected to who we are, to our being, so that we move from our being. It's really fundamentally, that's the purpose of the practice, is to connect the body, the mind, the spirit into a movement in life, into our beingness.
Oh, into a movement in life. Wow. Okay.
So if you are, say you are having a day of sitting with people and you're really connected to them and you're really feeling the flow of the doing, the activity of the psychotherapy, and that you feel that connected from your clients as well, that for me is yoga. It's we're in our beingness together, connected and doing and discovering what is ours to have. If it is a little less feeling of overwhelm or a little more groundedness, whatever comes out of those sessions, we have joined in the connectedness of who we are, and we have access to more of who we are as beings doing and having. So for me, yoga is life happening. Whatever we're engaging with is an opportunity for the yogic experience. So when I have students come into a class with me, yeah, it's that they usually come in with the idea of, I want more body wellness. And then they begin to discover that it's really a practice to open up into themselves and to see what they're present to so that they can move towards what they have. So it's the being, doing, having in a yoga practice. It's the being, doing, having, sitting with a client. It's, for me, it was the same process, not process, but the same exploration is probably better. It's all an exploration. And I think that is what we begin to discover when we say building our merit is the exploration of how we become more connected to who we are. And we begin to notice as we're more connected to who we are, we have more of that confidence in the sense of the merit of our beingness. Does that land for you?
Wow, it really does. That part of movement with life. And it's interesting because I remember certain times when Eastern practices were beginning to come into the United States. Not the very beginning, because I was, way back, but as I got old enough, I remember when certain ones and how people would get really Twitter-pated and or really receptive or just all these different reactions. But I'm looking at it now and thinking, wow, I reduced yoga to,
Yeah.
I left out the spirit of the matter, basically.
Our culture has reduced it.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yes. To, certain body movements, basically.
Right.
Sorry, people, I know that's really super simplistic. As opposed to what you're talking about of using the body to be a movement with life.
Yes.
Are you attuned in the flow? And then, of course, without our bodies, we're not going to be here engaging in whatever we're engaging in. Our engagement will change if our bodies are one way as opposed to another. But it is the same with the way I operate as a psychologist, is just using words or play therapy or that kind of engagement. But it's the same, is to activate the movement with life, improve it, tune it up, so to speak, to help whoever I'm talking to be more in the, it's like a chiropractic adjustment for their beingness.
Yes.
Is what so it's different. I get it. That was really, that was illuminating how you said that. I appreciate that.
And what I'm really paying attention to is both of us being trained as mental health professionals. My particular way of responding as a mental health professional was to include the body in the exploration along with the thinking, and to have both present in the exploration with a client. And because that's my innate way of moving with life, is to give the body a place to be in the experience of who we are. And our culture tends to downplay it severely. And I believe, I truly feel at this moment in time that we're in, that it is upon us to bring the body back.
Yeah, I really agree with that. That's a huge topic, and I'm going to use that to springboard. So we're talking about standing in your merit, and a little bit better way to get that idea across is moving with what's yours to be, do, and have. So let's talk about the have part, because I think that could be confusing in this culture, in this modern Western society. Success is measured by how much you do, what kinds of things you do, how much money you make, you know, everybody's familiar with different forms of, you know, what has more status than something else. You know, the moms who work 2 jobs, or the dads who work 2 jobs or more to keep body and soul together, so to speak, in their families, so that everybody can have a better life. That's not granted the same status as President of the United States or CEO, or different things that I could name. Teachers are not given the same status as other things. I mean, I know you know this, I'm just saying it out for kind of, so there's a haveness that an idea of what it is to have, that I think is money oriented, material oriented, and that, but you're not talking about that. You're talking about what's yours to have as something else. Obviously, the material is important. People deserve nice clothes, roof over their heads, plenty of good food to eat. There's no question. That's not what we're. So talk to me more about what you mean by this part of having, please.
Yes. And for me, I would start to say that having the material and all that goes with that is purposeful. It's purposeful to sustain us physically, mentally, and emotionally in our culture, for sure. So it's the both and. And for me, I think that's what's the missing part, is that and the material and the having of a sense of beingness that is peace or joy or connectedness, all of those ways in which we know we feel like our life has meaning or matters to us, to our families, to our communities, in the world. I look at the lens of those that only operate in the material. And oftentimes I have seen, and maybe we all see this, that there may be a lot of people that have a lot of physical, tangible things, money, but they're feeling empty, or their life doesn't have meaning, that they haven't found a way to take that abundance and move it into the world in a way that gives them the having of joy, the having of connection, of building something with all that they've accumulated. There are a lot of people in the world that do that, and there are a lot of people that don't. Just as there are a lot of people in the world that don't have a lot of physical things and money, but spread joy and feel that deep connection to who they are. So that it's a both and of having, that we want to step into the exploration. If I have lots of money and lots of things, and I have a super career that brings that type of abundance, how am I moving in my life that brings me the joy from that abundance? And if I don't have as much, how am I moving in my joy that sustains me regardless of whether I have that? Am I feeling fulfilled and joyful in being that beautiful woman in the airport? So that we get beyond this idea of identifying ourselves in either or camp, that we become more of who we are and connected, that the external circumstance of life is only the external circumstance, and it's what's inside coming forward in that guides us and helps us know that our intrinsic merit is in who we are. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And I'm kind of reaching for how I want to. I think what you said was really beautifully spoken and very clear. What I marvel at is how different we are in how we express things too. And I just think that's really beautiful. And there's a part we haven't really talked a lot, we meaning all of us that have presented here on Create a World across the different episodes. We haven't talked a lot about the language of creation templates, but there's one part of it that each template is two parts, one of which is called an observing. In the last line of each piece, there's a certain structure, and it says, has me have, blah, blah, blah. And that can be, has me have, trying to think of some ones I've written, but I'm having trouble coming up with it. But I could say, has me have, an unstable foundation, has me have everything I need in the world. I'm just making stuff up. The point is, on that part of it, it doesn't have to be what sounds positive. And it illuminates, like if I was writing what I'm observing using the template structure, and I say, has me have instability, let's say, then it's not that I'm claiming it for myself. I'm not claiming instability. I'm becoming aware of something in my world, something I have that shapes my life and how well I can let my light shine, so to speak, or not.
Mhm.
And it may be something I was completely unaware of.
Yeah.
But now suddenly I'm aware, oh, there's instability in some area of my life. It allows me to engage with that if that's what I choose, because I could sit there and say, oh man, I'm unstable. And I have done different versions of that, believe me. So, or I can get to work on what is that in different ways. So
Mhm.
having is kind of the relationship we have with it. The having is kind of the relationship that exists with whatever we're observing. Like, is it strong and grounded and a well-woven, life-enhancing pattern of, which to me includes give and take.
Mhm.
It-
The quote ups and downs of life, that we're not always up. And so one of our observings might have us notice that we're feeling anxious, or we're fearful, or we're angry, whatever emotion may be coming up. And again, it's our culture that tends to say, don't go there, right? Don't explore that because you'll become overwhelmed. And the observing templates, as you referred to, is that way for us to explore, one way for us to explore when we're feeling that overwhelm, or that anxious, or whatever is rising, for us to be with, that we can continue to be in the exploration without becoming overwhelmed by it. And we can continue to do what we call the unpacking of it, or peeling the onion.
yeah.
That, right? And so then you just become more and more aware. And for me, that becoming more and more aware is moving into the being again, like we're saying, that we actually allow ourselves time to listen to what's happening inside of us, in our thoughts, in our feelings, in the body talk that we're experiencing, if we give permission to listen to the body. All three of those access points give us the information that is being communicated from our system, and observing and continuing to observe. And some of us kind of naturally observe our experiences in life.
Mhm.
Like I can remember many times in life where I was observing. I didn't really like the circumstance I was in, and I needed to understand it more deeply from my body, from my feelings, from my thoughts about it, in order to make a sense of, where do I go from here? What do I do with this? How do I move in life towards something that's life enhancing, like you brought up? Recognizing and being with what feels life defeating, if you will, in order to give myself permission to really understand what life defeating is for me, and what might it look like, what might the shape of it be that moves me towards life enhancing. And to me, I think that's what psychotherapy offers us, is the opportunity to be in that exploration and have support. And the same thing, the yoga practice, we move on a mat to awaken ourselves to the body, to awaken ourselves to what we're thinking about when we're moving, how we're feeling about, oh, this feels cranky today, and just allowing it to be present instead of that sense of everything's got to be fixed and everything's got to be tidy. And I think that's what you are moving with the observing template of having me have, is it doesn't always have to be tidy or fixed. We have to be with it again. So that's part of the having, is to be with it as it is and decide if there's something, some way in which you move towards what you would love it to be. And that's that other side of the template writing that you referred to. The other end is craving what is ours to have, and what that might look like. Imagination.
There's so much in what you just said, but I'm going to go to the part that listening to you is so luscious. You and I think differently and express differently. And the more we talk, the more there's to me, an ease and grace of wefting and weaving, and I'm hearing you better. But before this episode, people, I had trouble hearing Victoria because she's different than me. And the way she uses words is not usually from my frame of reference. It isn't from my usual frame of reference. So it's so enriching right now. And I appreciate it a lot. Thank you. So you said something, I think I heard you right, because you said you used the phrase move with it. There was something you said that was a different reference than I would have used, and I want to know more, but I don't know if I'm getting at it because you said several things.
Okay. So what feels like you're asking me to explore further.
Or you said from the body.
Right.
And I'm like, what?
Is this notion of how we listen. How do we listen to ourselves? How do we listen with another? And when you had said to me recently, sometimes I hear you, but I don't even know what you're saying. What that did for me was it gave me an opportunity to know that I may not be heard in the usual way for people, but that doesn't mean I stop being who I am. It means I keep exploring how to language and bridge the way I am to be with another. And it gave me the gift of, oh, I didn't know we didn't have enough of that being grounded together. That's good for me to know so that I can pay more attention to, are you with me? And I think that's really important in these times, how to listen with another. And what I've discovered in our recent conversations and further today is that we're laying more ground of how to be with another in this. And so we're building our connection with each other and recognizing the both and again of we have unique ways of languaging it, being with it, as you said. And the being with is the listening, the paying attention to how we are, not only in ourselves, but with the other person or the natural world, or whatever it is that we're actually in that listening for. What is the way in which I connect to?
If I was interacting with you from, let's say, the system we were born into, I might say, what is she talking about?
Mhm.
And be somewhat dismissive.
Mhm.
Fortunately, and actually, I think I don't know if this is true or not, but for me, I think training to be a good therapist has helped me because I have to listen into the other person's world. And somewhere along the line, it occurred to me that that's a good skill to bring to every area of my life.
Mhm.
You know,
Yep.
clients and therapists are people all the same.
Mhm.
And I'm not going to have every experience in the universe. So I have to really listen to what's being said to me and how it's being said. I have to be able to be expanded. So that's kind of what.
Well, you just said it, Deb.
Yeah, I've been expanded
And
by
the
having
have,
to work with. I'm
and the
sorry.
word have, and the word have, the having expansion, right?
Yes.
If I'm having the expansion of my being, I'm able to be with another, client or whomever, as
Yeah.
because we are people.
Yeah.
And there again is another, gosh, that was brilliant. Another way of understanding for ourselves, of comprehending, having. Wow.
Because I, in leaning into, I don't even know how to describe how you just spoke everything that's been, but the leaning into it, I do feel expanded. I do feel opened up into something. I do feel like my comprehension and ability to navigate has been enhanced. Even if that consciously dissipates after we're done with this episode, it's not going to leave me. So you have demonstrated, in my view, standing in your merit. This is what you bring to the party. I appreciate you letting me use you as an example.
But I'd love to pop it right back to you.
Okay.
Opened up into expansion as you have, fill in the blank. I'm curious.
Yeah, as me have deeper comprehension of the world around me. Yeah. Yeah. For anyone watching that doesn't know, that we just talked out a
Yeah.
piece of the observing part of the template.
I'm feeling how I feel from hearing you fill in what it has you have, and how my body, my feeling self, my mental mind, how it registered what that was for you. I feel my system more connected to you in hearing you express what you have from feeling expanded, being expanded. And that's the power of us listening deeply with one another. And that's you being in your merit as well.
Yeah.
To really go in and listen and express from that place, you standing in your own merit to say, oh, this is what I have in my being. I think this is fantastic. I'm just like having fun right now.
Me too. And I'm seeing so much of standing in our merit Okay, I'm trying to get words here. Standing in our merit has to include with another in the field. It has to include, even in the metaphors, let your light shine and what's yours to be, do, and have. Well, the be, do, and have could be kind of an individual, encapsulation. But the letting your light shine,
Yeah.
automatically you're out into other.
So I just drew upon this kind of metaphor idea from my yoga background. There's the, lack of a better word, guru, sadhu, the people that go and find a cave and meditate their whole lives and become connected to the oneness, however you want to call that. I'll just say the oneness, the source from which we all come, emanate. So that would be the being in your own being, doing, having, connected to all that is. And then there's the householder version of a yogi that operates in the world, the shining their light, right? That's the everyday, those of us who live in the world, but not of the world, or of the world, but not like at the effect of it, I guess you might say. So we've taken the yoga principles and we've practiced and we've become more of the embodiment of it, which is the being, to do and have what is ours, to shine our light with others. So it's, you get to choose, I guess you might say. If you want to go and be in a cave and just be connected with everything, then I guess you can do that.
Yeah.
I choose to be connected to people and the rest of the earth and everything that is around me. I want to be in relationship. That's my having, is to be in relationship with everything and operating from my being in that relationship. So that, I think that's what you're speaking to, is this, you get to choose how you're going to do it. Most of us are going to find ourselves in the relationship realm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really a cool point, because not only do I have periods in my life where I'm a hermit, I'm not being out in the world particularly. Never, I'm not, there's only a slight connection with the gurus and all who live in the cave and have that immense connectivity with powers and forces greater than ourselves. But that's their authentic self-expression. That's what they're called to. For me, I agree. I have the call to be out in the world in various ways is authentic to me too. There was something you said though, and we got a couple more minutes, that had me think, yeah, but how do you keep it sustainable? Like, images of teachers who have 25 kids in their class, or police officers who, it's a long day of dealing with the things that we prefer not to see in our lives unless we're watching television, unless it's coming through as entertainment. But they deal with it as real life. Same with, I mean, we could name all these different ways of manifesting in the world. How do you keep it sustainable?
Yeah.
And I think part of this thing that like, I'm having so much fun with you too. I'm filled up even as I'm giving out, and vice versa.
I think you just said how you do it.
Mm.
I'm filled up as I'm giving out. that it's upon us to fill ourselves up with what is life enhancing, so that if we're in the world in ways that the culture isn't necessarily operating in life enhancing, we have a better opportunity to move from the life enhancing aspect as we're dealing with the challenges that we're sustained from our being, to move with life when it doesn't appear life enhancing, that we have a better chance at it. I wanted to also pop in there. COVID was a really interesting exploration for many of us about going within. And I look at the as we're coming back into relationship with one another, more physically, as well as just being out in the world in groups of people. How are we different? How did we change our being with ourselves from that experience in COVID? And how do we sustain what the impact of COVID, to have us pay attention to our being? Many people I know changed careers, moved into their lives and said, I don't want what I had before. That was life defeating. I want to move in what's life enhancing. So I think it's happening.
Yeah.
Because of COVID. So as much as COVID was challenging, it's also that lens of, how do I stay connected to my being and come and move back into moving with the world in relationship from what did become more life enhancing to me. So that's another way of looking at the policemen, the healthcare workers. We need to support those people that didn't get an opportunity to kind of come back into their being. The rest of us that didn't work in the daily experience of COVID, the people who work in grocery stores and whatnot, I think we need to come and kind of circle the wagons, if you will. But that's another conversation too. And I know we're close to finish.
Yeah, we will. Yeah, but it's a good point. Because I said for a long time, yes, there were humongously devastating aspects of COVID. No question about that. That in a way, I hope we never get over it as part of honoring what really happened. But we had to actively, we had to get very consciously aware of what sustains us and what got disrupted.
Yeah.
So yes, that's another conversation, and because we're down to just a minute or so. Yeah. So any last words for you as we wrap it up? I think the conscious awareness part is really important, and I'd like to pick that up another day.
Yeah, and I think it's the word that really stands out is listening in yourself and listening with another. And that builds our merit.
That is brilliant. Listening, conscious awareness. That's a great way to wrap up. What is it to stand in your merit?
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for being with us today. This was an important engagement, I think.
Yeah.
And
more to